Megan, welcome to the Booster Boutique podcast. I am
Yeah,
thrilled to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
Let's talk about first where we met. And I think that will naturally guide into the story about you and how you started your business. But you've been around a long time, 10 years now.
Yep. We will actually turn 11 in June. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. So we go to my husband's family farm north of Saratoga, between Saratoga Springs, New York and Lake George. I die to come to downtown Saratoga because you guys have the most adorable stores. There's like, I hate saying
Yeah.
there's something for everyone, but it is a downtown and there is kind of something for everyone. And I always remember noticing your store first. You and Piper, honestly, like you guys were the ones who were like, you just were always there. I never remember you not being there since I've been dating him for dating. We've been together 12, 13
Yeah.
years. So you've always been there. But
Yep.
how did you open Lola Saratoga?
So a little bit about my background first. It's
Yes,
similar
please,
to
please.
yours. So I started out in corporate buying and retail planning. So that's my total background. I was at Bloomingdale's. I was in contemporary accessories, designer accessories, and then moved on to ready to wear at the end of my career at Bloomingdale's. And then after I'd been there for about 7 years, I left to open my boutique in Saratoga Springs. So we opened that in 2013. So I really do have like a strong retail analytical background. Went through the merchandise training program. You turn into a little corporate robot. It's ingrained in you for until the end of time, really. And that's really how I learned to run my own business.
The complex trauma from corporate retail survivors. I think we should start a support group because I met someone recently who had
Yeah,
the same boss I had. We had them
yeah,
she's 15 years younger than us. Okay.
yeah,
She
yeah,
had the same boss like 2 or 3 years ago, right out the start of her career. And
yeah,
I was like, I feel for you. She is a horrible boss. She is so mean. I
yeah,
am
yeah.
so sorry. But I felt so bonded. Like we're best friends forever now. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because we've bonded over that trauma.
We used to say we had Stockholm syndrome because we learned to love our captors. And I mean, I did have some really great bosses, but I definitely had some bosses that made me cry in the bathroom a few times a week. But it was character building, I guess.
Well, and that's
I,
why. But
I can
isn't
make it
that
very,
why you wanna be nice to people now? Because you're like,
yeah,
"Why? I don't wanna put someone through what I went through. That does not feel fair."
I agree. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
I had some good bosses too, and I had the favorite stall that I like to cry in
Of
mostly.
course. Absolutely. It's like 10 seconds to just let it out and like get yourself back together and get back out into your little cubicle and keep going.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little, cold water on the neck, just, reset. Oh my gosh. Did
Mhm.
you grow up around Saratoga? Is that sort of why you decided to go start
Yeah.
there? Okay.
Yep. So I'm originally from the area and I'd always thought about opening my own boutique. And it really got to the point of my corporate career where I was like, all right, what am I doing? I'm working banker hours without the banker salary, like crazy, crazy hours. It was like I would eat, sleep, breathe Bloomingdale's. I loved my job, but it was just so much. And I'm definitely part of it's me too. Like I'm naturally a workaholic. I'm hard on myself. I'm a perfectionist. I'm type A when it comes to work. So I definitely think part of it is me. So I was like, why don't I take this energy and put it into my own business?
It's so smart, and, I think we are twins from different
Yeah.
areas or something because,
Yeah.
your story is 1,000% mine. I knew I would always open something. That was never a question. It was more of just when and how would it happen, and
Yeah.
I was lucky to get laid off. Did you just decide to quit?
I did. I just decided to quit. Yes. Yep. And it was like the scariest day ever because I did love everybody that I worked with. They really, it was almost like a weird sorority, like in a way, because it was just like all these women, everybody, we all had the same interests generally. All the coworkers pretty much got along. So it was hard to say goodbye, but I knew it was like the right step for me.
Yeah, and I think in your late 20s, which is, I think, kind of around the time we both started, you kind of have nothing to lose. I remember
Exactly.
just being like, I have a gym membership and like my
Right.
apartment that I can sublet or whatever, you know what I mean? Like find someone to
Right.
replace me. So it does feel like a really wonderful time to take a big risk because you're not, at least for us
Yeah.
I didn't even have a boyfriend. I was just like dating. I didn't have a car. I lived in Manhattan. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it felt really easy to sort of abandon that life to take this risk. And
Yeah.
when you started, did you immediately go into brick and mortar? Because we didn't really have
Yeah.
online selling. Like people would ask me, like, "Oh, did you use Shopify?" And I'm like, "Shopify
Yeah.
didn't exist." Like when we were starting out, like I said, I think we're the old ladies in the room in a sort of tongue in cheek way because we're
Yeah.
very young still. But when you're
Yeah.
doing this for 20 years, you've seen so much.
Yes. Yeah. So I really started out with just brick and mortar. I feel like 2013 is really when e-commerce was becoming more important, but I didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity to start with e-commerce at the time. So I just really focused on our one boutique in Saratoga and just focused on like building that clientele, building relationships, and sort of figuring out what our clients were looking for.
And did you start off as resale? Because that's what you call yourself now is like luxury resale, if I'm getting it right.
Yep. So we did not. So I knew I wanted to open a store that was just focused on accessories. I had spent a lot of
Okay.
time on ready to wear, and I think I joked that I was traumatized by the sizing matrix. And so the beginning of my career at Bloomingdale's was in accessories, and I loved it. I was so passionate about it. So I knew I wanted to start off in accessories. So that's really where we started. So our average price point when we first started was about $50, believe it or not. So it was contemporary accessories, jewelry, and then we did have like Rebecca Minkoff handbags, Kate Spade handbags. So there were a few branded items that we were able to like secure based on my relationships with those vendors. But really, when we started out, it was it was opening price point.
I love though that you had that higher end feel because I remember walking in and the first time, I think I knew you didn't sell clothes because you don't
Yep.
have mannequins in the window. That's not really your jam, but you have this beautiful awning. And like, this is how I remember it, whether you started with that or not. I'm sure my memory doesn't serve me well, but the thing about the way that Megan has designed just the storefront, it's so classic. It's so what you think a storefront in a downtown area should look like. So it just immediately your brain driving by says, "Oh, a boutique." And I remember coming in and you had the Kate Spade bags and you had beautiful jewelry and you had some other little accessories. Maybe you also had like scarves and shawls and things like that too to like get some fabric. But I loved the simplicity of your store because it felt like high end with so much white space. But then when you did your displays were like almost like shopping in someone's apartment, like a studio apartment. You had this very like downtown vibe and like it just felt really cute, Like I remember you had the quotes on the wall as you walk in. And I mean, you're still kind of, I think you've up leveled a lot. Like obviously you've done
Yes.
renovations, but there was something special about the way you made the store feel warm and inviting. Do you think that the price points being that $50, but also, Rebecca Minkoff is what, $300,
Yeah.
150 handbags. Do you think that price structure served you from the beginning?
I think in the beginning, it was great because I would say in the beginning, I probably didn't have the confidence to sell the price points that we're selling currently, right? So it was like more like testing the market with these like contemporary price points. So starting off with the two, three, $400 handbags. And then from there, we really grew. And I think, especially with us, when we had like costume jewelry and accessories, it was easy for people to buy multiples. So after a while, you start to learn what your customer's looking for. And I think that's so important is a lot of people also think they can just open a boutique, hire a manager, and just pop in and out. But people want to see the owner in the store. They want to talk to you. They want to know that the owner helped them. They value the owner. And especially if you're in like a downtown community or like a smaller town, I think that's like definitely something really important that people almost forget about.
I agree with you. And we find all the time anecdotally that when the owner's in the store, it's a higher sales day. Like instead of
Mhm.
having $1,000 sales day, you have a $4,000 sales day because you're
True.
there.
Yep.
When did you make the shift and why? I think you added this whole other side of your business, right? Because you did
Mhm.
start as pretty much a traditional accessories boutique. And then at what point did you start adding resale items and like how did you start kind of
Yep.
navigating that? Because I mean, it's not out of left field. Obviously, you live in a place where there's a lot of people buying designer bags and probably wanting to flip them. But
Mhm.
how did that even start?
So it all really started in 2016. I had spoken to another resale shop in the area that primarily just did clothing. And I said, you should do just like a really high end curated, just handbag accessories shop with just like shoes and accessories and handbags and just like all in excellent condition. I just like think it would be so amazing. And she never did it. And so I could not stop thinking about it. Because that's how I like to shop. I love vintage. I love pre-owned luxury. I love the thrill of saving the $1,000 on this designer handbag that's brand new that you know what I mean? Like things like that get me excited. So finally I was telling one of my clients about my idea and she was like, "Oh yeah, I have some bags. I'll just bring them in and drop them off and put them in a little case. We'll see how they sell." And I really credit her so much because she gave me the confidence to sell them because I didn't have to put up the money, which I really didn't have the money to be buying Chanel bags outright at the time. We had this little tiny, and I got it from IKEA, like vignette, this glass vignette that was like floor to like 6 foot high of just like, 8 handbags. And we like slowly built off of it. And it was like a slow build and it took off.
That's incredible, and I love how naturally it happened. It was not a forced business
No.
plan. It was like, "You know what? Let's try it because
Yeah.
I can't stop thinking about it, and I have to see what happens." I have a few of those ideas in my head
Yeah.
lately where I'm just like, "Oh, like, I really wanna do something cool," you know?
Yes.
Um, and I think that's it, so those first bags, let's just talk logistics, right? Those first bags, did you buy them at she consigned them to you and you just paid her what
Yep.
was your breakdown then of how much you paid her versus you? Do you
Yeah.
remember
So
that?
at the time, I remember I only took 10% because I was like, I don't she's doing me a favor. She just dropped off like 10 Chanel bags, right? So I really didn't know that much about the industry, I mean, I knew about handbags. My old life was, luxury designer goods from working at Bloomingdale's, luxury designer accessories. So I understood the bags and how to speak to them, how to sell them, but I didn't really understand the pre-owned luxury market. So after those first few sales, I became obsessed and like in all the right ways because I just loved it. And it was just so fun for me. So after building off of those first few sales, we started coming up with like consignment structures and how we were moving forward. And it really is just like a slow evolution and build off of those first few bags that were dropped off.
So if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, I want to do this in my
Mhm.
downtown,
Yeah.
are there like resources for authentication and
Yeah.
learning about the market? Like, where are you kind of getting that education from? Because it's obviously pretty specific, but also it must build so much trust with your clients because you're able to resell knowing that it's real, because that's obviously like a huge issue in the industry as well.
Yeah. So I think the crux of our whole business model is authenticity, right? So without that, we don't have anything. So that I have really become obsessed with. And actually, even one of my clients the other day is like, you're obsessed with like the authenticity piece. So I trust you. which I love that they know this about me. I mean, there are companies that authenticate handbags and will certify them for you. When we get in higher ticket items like a Birkin, we'll get them double or triple authenticated. So we really do stand by the authenticity of our goods because your reputation is everything.
When you are getting some of these bigger bags now, right? Because you mean, as we've talked about, you started in 2013. So it's been, I think you just celebrated 10 years officially, but like, let's say you're going into your 11th year, right? What has been sort of the hardest piece of, do you think, growing your business? Because you've been through a lot, like pandemic, and we'll talk about some extra things that have happened, but you've done remodels, you've moved locations, like, what would you say was the part where you're like, I want to give up now? Like, we're done. Like, was there any that moment where you were just like so over it?
I would say probably our robbery was the moment where I would say I'm done. I always say I'm very resilient. And my friend always says I'm like a cat. I always land on my feet. So I always recite that in my head. I'm always like, I always land on my feet. I always land on my feet. Cause I think I'm scrappy. I can figure anything out. I'm resourceful. I'm always like looking to move forward. So I don't really let a lot of things like get in my way. And that's why I think we've seen so much growth. But I would say our robbery was probably the only time where I was like, screw this. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want a regular job. This is not worth the trauma and stress. So that was probably the only time, believe it, even at the pandemic, I was still like steadfast in making sure we'd get through that. And again, I think I was scrappy during the pandemic. I turned on ads in Florida, Texas, and like the whole southern border. So we were shipping out every day to all the states that were not shut down. So I always find different ways to make it work for us, but that was probably the only time that I felt like I was ready to be done.
Well, and I mean, I think for you, I've watched you go through it on social media, the
Mhm.
robberies, right? Was it not
Mhm.
two robberies back to back? Because
We did
that's,
have to, yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want to give the like 2-minute, like, here's what
Yep.
happened to us, and then we can like move on to like what we learned from it? Because I
Yes,
think, like you said, I don't want to scare people, but when you are dealing with some of the high-end goods you are dealing with, you do become a target, I
yes.
think. So
Yeah.
walk us through what happened because it was so tragic.
Yeah, so 2 weeks before Christmas, we had a smash and grab robbery in the middle of the night. The thieves smashed our front door, came in, they were in and out in under 90 seconds. They took over $100,000 of inventory. Obviously, it was 2 weeks before Christmas. We had the most amount of inventory we've had in the store in probably our entire 11 years because we were building off of a really big e-commerce bump. And the next morning, I found out that it had happened. I had all these missed calls from the Saratoga Police Department. We came in, we assessed, they had taken all of our Chanel bags, every single Birkin bag, all of our Dior bags. Everything was gone. They literally like wiped the cases clean. And it was really honestly traumatizing because I feel like I saw everything that I worked for just like gone and it was just evaporated. And someone came in and took that all away in 90 seconds. And for a small boutique, your store is your home. Like I spend more time there than my own house a lot of the time. So it felt like a real violation, honestly. So that was definitely our most trying time as an entrepreneur.
I mean, the safety element of it as well, just knowing
Mhm.
that it's like a woman-centric
Mhm.
place that's being
Yep.
targeted.
Yep.
Obviously the goods inside are what the target is, but knowing that it's attached to like womanhood and being linked to violence. And I mean, smash and grab is not a non-violent thing. So I
Yeah.
mean, I like there's no way around just saying that's like the most horrible thing. And from a business owner perspective, from a safety perspective, it's just come on.
I know,
Come
yeah.
on.
I think I was definitely in shock at first, and then I was mad. I definitely went through every
Yeah,
stage of
of course.
grief, I guess.
Of
And
course.
there was definitely I think that first day, I remember my husband coming and helping me, like, clean up the glass in the store, and I was, like, crying, and I was like, "I just wanna work in a cubicle, like, that's it. It's over, I'm done." And he was like, "I think you might wanna think about this for a little bit longer." He knows me too well. He's like, "Sure, okay. You'll change your mind in a week."
Well, it seems so much easier. It's so
I
much
know, it's
easier to just go drive to a cubicle, sit
yeah,
there, type on a
yeah,
computer all day. Like
right,
being an entrepreneur, especially a retail entrepreneur, is you just wear so many hats. And when the straw is ready to break, or that I can't, like, it's ready to break and it breaks you, like, of course you're gonna want to give up. Like, I would have been surprised if you were like, let's keep going. Like,
and the other hard thing that a lot of people don't think about, like, I'm in charge of 12 people. Like, I can't crumble. I have to be steering the ship. So after I was done crying for, like, 20 minutes, I'd be like, okay, guys, everything's going to be fine. Let's just try to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to do A, B, and C. And you have to be a leader, and you really need to step up. And you don't have the luxury of laying in bed and
yeah, like
crying.
falling apart.
I couldn't call out and cry in bed for a day. Like, I was there the next day. Customers wanted to come in and support us. People were coming in and buying. They were buying gift cards. The whole town, like, really rallied against around us, and I think that is, like, really the silver lining, is seeing our town rally around us and support us and our community. And I mean, we do donate to a lot of local charities and community events. And I think a lot of relationships that we've built throughout the 11 years, I mean, those things are all really important. And we saw, like, such an outpour of love from our customers and community.
Honestly, you deserve it though, because you have been there for so long and you have been such a big part of the community. I mean, I've been going there now for 10 or 12 years, like I
Yep.
remember the summer Greg first brought me out to the farm, it was like, and we always go to Saratoga because it's the only place that's like civilized, sort of close by, and I feel like have always been such a constant with so much around there
Yeah.
rotating and changing. Like it is a very like it's changed a lot in 10 years, right? And you've been there and you've stuck through, to have such persistence and to persevere so much and have this thing kind of like, oof, like it's normal to want to just say, you know what? That's it. Like I have gone for so long and I'm just kind
No.
of over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, what has been, I think, like, to just finish up that conversation though, like, is there any piece of advice where, looking back and knowing what
Mhm.
you know now, like, could you share with boutique owners who have a brick and mortar to keep themselves more safe, or knowing you need a camera system? Like, what would you say is that, like, number one thing?
We always had a camera system. We had an alarm system, but it wasn't very advanced. I think I have to say I was naive. Like, I very much thought, "Oh, we're in this cute downtown. The police are 2 blocks
Right.
away from, and we're on this main street. It's so safe. Nothing ever happens here." I was definitely naive. So, I would tell anybody who has a brick and mortar store to definitely make sure they have the right kind of alarm system, more sophisticated cameras. We did actually just put on a coating onto all of our windows that are smash proof. So there's a lot of steps we've taken since then to ensure that this doesn't happen again. But I definitely would say I was naive. I really did not think that this would happen. And surprisingly, since this has happened, I've spoken to other small businesses across the country where this has happened to. And like this one woman with in a tiny, tiny town in Texas, and these guys did the same thing to them. And I mean, it's organized crime, and they're
There's almost
well.
no way to avoid it, even if like, I agree. I would be naive too,
Yeah,
100%. But I also think, like you're saying, part of it is like, don't be naive because like, it just happens.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
happens everywhere. You're not immune to it.
I honestly hadn't like I heard about like Louis Vuitton or the Chanel store in Manhattan getting, smash and grab, and that I had known about, but I had not heard about any pre-owned luxury stores getting hit that were in smaller towns. So I wish I had, because I probably would have done something. So I just would say to anyone, don't be naive about this, because it is something that could really happen, and it's better to be safe than sorry.
Well, I'm glad that you are safe and your employees are
Yeah.
safe. And,
Yes.
it is just bags.
Yes.
Okay. But also it's your livelihood. And like you said, you have
Yeah.
12 people, you have a community to support.
Mhm.
So, it is a good reminder though, too, for our downtown people of like, hey, come still support us because we
Yeah.
are here and vulnerable. So I want to talk a little bit about the business, kind of just to like come full circle because I think you're one of the main people that inspires me to want to talk more about resale, consignment, thrift, whatever, like remaking clothes and selling one of a kinds. Like I think I would never say that you fall into the consignment or thrift category only for the fact that you're not buying new things anymore. You are reselling other stuff. So there is that sustainability factor that I think is so cool
Yep.
that you're doing it in this really highbrow way. So
Yeah.
anyway, I think I want to talk to you about like kind of where do you see fashion, this segment of fashion going? And are you going to open more stores? Do you plan to grow online? Like, I think and I guess like also how do you feel about the size of your business? Do you want to get bigger? Do you want to stay where you're at? Like, because you've
Yeah.
kind of done the one store, now you have the two stores. And anyway, this is where I want to transition it. This is a
Yeah.
bad transition, but like I do want to talk about the business side because you're so brilliant. So, like, tell me, what are your big things right now that you're chewing on, like, within your kind of industry?
So I'm very passionate about TikTok shopping. I think it is such, which I know TikTok is having a moment where it's a little controversial. It might get banned, it might not get banned. I think they're gonna figure something out.
They have to. It's the ninth largest. Did you hear this fact that it's the ninth largest e-commerce site in the US right now? Ninth.
I I did not hear that fact, but I believe it. So we launched in a beta program with TikTok in October. It is crazy how much business we're doing on TikTok. It would blow your mind. So, I mean, we go live twice a week. We are going to start going live. We want to eventually start going live 4 times a week. It also elevates our e-commerce platform as well. So we see a lift in sales in our TikTok, because for anybody who doesn't know, TikTok you can buy right on the app. So you don't have to like get out of TikTok while someone's live selling and purchase on the e-commerce site. You can just purchase, check out while you're watching a live selling. So to me, TikTok is almost like the new QVC. So it's like the younger generation's QVC. It's such a booming market right now. I think there's so much growth potential there. I'm very focused on it because I think there's just like unlimited potential at this point on TikTok shopping. Because, like I said, we have seen a lift in our e commerce site from the time we started with TikTok Shop up until now. Our e commerce has like skyrocketed.
Okay, so you're going
Probably
twice
I
a
was
week.
going to say that.
No, I love that you're talking about this because I have such a love-hate with TikTok. I think TikTok's incredible. I think if you ban it, you're banning a lot of business in America. Like, I think it's bad for business, period. And I think that the government would be stupid to tone it down. I think that there's a huge e-commerce element. I'm glad you're bringing it up because I think the most controversial part that I can call out is like, wait a minute, you're not selling like a graphic tee or like a calendar or a journal. You're selling, I mean, what's
Mhm.
your average retail selling point? Like, are you selling a $15,000 bag on TikTok shop?
No, I would say for us, the under 1,000 is our sweet spot.
Okay.
Listen, this is all about I think anything with retail goes back to relationship building
Yes.
when you are selling a high-end item. I think when you're selling anything, but specifically high-end, it's so important. We have people who come back every week and watch us, and they get to know us. They ask us questions. We answer them live. We show them the bags. We tell them our origin story. Like they really get to know us and then they trust us. And maybe they test out with like a little wallet and then they get a bag and then they get the nicer bag. So we do have a lot of repeat purchasers every week from TikTok shopping. And it's almost like they tune in, they call it like showmanship on TikTok. Like, so, certain sellers have better showmanship. They're more entertaining to watch. You have the people who sit there and just, are like, here's this. Okay, do you want it? It's $20. And then you have the people who are engaging and they're like, where's everyone tuning in from? How are you doing today? What do we want to look at? Like, here's this Chanel bag. Did you know this is from 94? In 94, the whole story and romanticizing the item and the history behind it. And it's like a storytelling piece to the business. And it really is, it's been a really wild ride.
It reminds me of a virtual J. Crew catalog. Like, remember when we were kids, I remember I would wait for certain catalogs, Delia's, J. Crew, like, right?
Yes.
And the copy in it would be beautiful and you'd want to read it. I had a babysitter over recently who maybe was like 19 or 20, and she was like, "Is this a magazine or like what is this?" Because I asked her to separate catalogs from magazines and she couldn't tell the difference. And I was like, they're not a thing anymore, you know what I mean? But that's what TikTok is. It's a virtual catalog where you're
Mhm.
interacting with the model and you're able to ask questions. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. And listen, it's a better version, I think, of a Facebook Live. I think we're getting cleaner, we're getting more efficient with our online sales. Digital marketing is becoming more streamlined, but also more authentic. Like, I I want to ask you if you're open to sharing sort of like your percentages. Like, I guess let's do pre TikTok shop. What were you like e-com versus in store sales
Mhm.
wise? Was it really 50-50?
So,
Like,
no, e-com was only 10% of our business
that's
bef
normal.
yeah,
That's
and
so normal for brick and mortar.
since we launched TikTok Shop, we bumped up to 20%. Because if you look at TikTok Shop and e-com combined, because to me that's kind of the same, like, not in-store selling, together it's 20%.
That's incredible. So, okay, and it really hasn't pulled away from your in-store
No.
sales because it doesn't compete. It's fully incremental sales on top of what you were already doing.
Yes, and
Wow.
we are getting a whole other pool of clients. They're coming back to the website. They're shopping with us on our website and following us on Instagram, and, like, it's just, like, a new cycle of clients that we're seeing that are coming in.
I have this really big nudge lately around the idea that we need to all like reintroduce ourselves to the world. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like all the people that now are finding me have no idea about like the fashion truck. They have
Right.
no idea like I had a store. Like they just haven't heard those stories yet. And so it's
Yeah.
interesting because I agree with you. It's like sort of this new cycle of
Yeah.
customers, buyers, like something about I don't know if it's a generational flip, but some kind of flip happened recently, I feel like amongst customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
No, I
weird spot. Uh, okay, so here's my other thing I wanna ask you. Do you think that if someone wants to start a resale, consignment thrift, is now a better time than before? Do you feel like, my general take, I'll just tell you this, like, it feels like with sustainability and with like with the absolute backlash of like the Sheins and the Temu sort of overconsumption, I believe that there's going to be a huge trend towards resale, whatever that looks like, rentals, all these things. Do you find that you got in early on it and now we're kind of seeing it become bigger?
Oh, I do because even I've noticed when I first started doing pre-owned luxury, people would be so confused when they'd come in the store. They would come in, they'd be like, "So these are used?" And they'd be like, "And then you have some new stuff?" But these are and it was like a very difficult concept for people to grasp onto. Now it's like no introduction needed. People walk in, they're like, "Oh, these are pre-owned. Do they come certified?" Like the consumer's smart. She knows what to ask. She's asking all the right questions. She's checking prices on the real. She's like doing her price comps. Like the consumer has caught up. So they're definitely a more educated consumer than they were, 5 years ago, even. So I definitely think we're just going to continue to see that growth. And I have noticed a lot more like younger girls who are valuing the vintage pieces more. Like they'll come in and they'll be like, oh, this is so Y2K, or like, oh, this is, something Paris Hilton would wear on Simple Life, and, things like that. They're like getting a kick out of and they're like obsessing over. So it's just a whole new viewpoint. And I definitely think there's a shift in the market.
With your sourcing, are you still in a position where you're getting from a lot of like individuals, or do you go to like Paris to source things, and kind of where are you looking and what are you thinking about in terms of, because like your entire inventory relies on your relationships basically, and where you can source good
Yep.
products. That
Yeah.
scares me.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have we're constantly building a larger network of consigners, right? So I mean, even just last week we got a new consigner. She lives in Manhattan. She sent us 4 Chanel bags. We sold 2 in a week, and she was like, I'm sending you more like next week. So it's like building that trust, building that relationship. She got paid out in a week. She was super happy. The consigner needs to build that trust. The business itself is very difficult because you're building trust on both ends, right? So it's like not like you just have this one vendor and you're buying like $100,000 of goods from every year, and like that's it. You just have to worry about like Samantha in the or in the like sales office, and that's it. This is like there's so many individual relationships between the buyer and the consigner that you have to deal with, and appeasing both. So it is a balancing act.
It's crazy to think about the idea that you're having to navigate like a business to a consumer. You're almost like an art dealer, honestly. Like I feel like the way you're talking, my sister-in-law is an art dealer in Manhattan.
Yeah,
And she's always talking about how she's dealing with like the gallery, which is dealing with the artist, and then she's dealing
yeah,
with the buyer, and the sort of dance between all of the parties to like
yeah,
get the deal done, get this beautiful piece of art into someone new's hands, right? So you are kind of like a luxury dealer, which is kind of fun.
yeah. I like to say I'm a handbag matchmaker. So I'm like finding the perfect match.
I love that. Okay, you have to tell me too before we get off. Do you still like freak out a little bit when you sell like a Birkin, or, one of these like, I mean, you have bags on your site and I sound like such a wussy, but like you have like $20,000 bags. Like that's some big time set. Like that's beautiful artwork. You know what I mean? You're selling Picassos. Do
Mhm.
you ever sort of just like giggle and think like, I can't believe I'm doing
I
this? And like, I
it
can't believe it's sold, and like, this is silly.
It does not get old. I am not desensitized to it, I will tell you that. I still freak out. I still get really excited when we sell like a $5,000 Chanel bag. So I am not desensitized to it. I will say last week we sold a $50,000 crocodile Birkin bag, and one of my longstanding clients bought it from me. And I feel like I was in shock
Did you black
because
out a little?
I think I blacked out because we were having a conversation afterwards, and I was like, she wrote me a check, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, I was like, I checked my wallet every 5 minutes to make sure it was still in there for like 24 hours until I got to the bank the next day. So those times I'm still like, what just happened? This is crazy. And is this real life? So it's definitely not lost on me at all.
So cool. Good. I love to hear that, because I do think one of the things we were talking about before we started filming was just that like we're both retail nerds. And I think like there is that sort of like, like you get
Yes,
excited when you see your design on a person on the street, or you get excited when that order sells out or whatever. Like there still
yes,
is that like excitement with your business.
yes. And I think my excitement is contagious with my team too, because I get excited and they get excited, and we all just feed off of each other. And that's what I think is important, is like keeping us all passionate about what we do.
Yeah, I mean, now that you have 2 stores, do you feel like you wanna do more stores? Or are you kind of like, "Oh, let's grow this online space?" Like, what's kinda nudging you? Because you have choices, like, at the stage you're at, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will say we did get invited to do a third location for the summer in a very affluent area, a seasonal area. And we're not going to do it because I just don't think we have the bandwidth for it. I think there are other things I want to focus on first, like our e commerce growth, our TikTok growth, before I dip into a third brick and mortar space. So, yeah, that's
Good
my
for
that's
you.
my current strategy. Yes. Yeah.
It's a hard decision to turn down things that feel like they could be so wonderful, but you also are being really realistic about the level of work you can handle. I mean, like you said, like you're like me, like naturally a workaholic. I guarantee you wanted to say yes to that, right?
I
Yeah.
absolutely my initial reaction was like, "Yes, I'll be there.
Yeah.
I
Like,
will
what time do
physically
I show up?
I will physically open the store myself." Like,
Yes, of course.
I will
I'll
do
sleep
everything.
there at night. I'll be up in the morning. We'll just do
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes. So that was my initial reaction, and I had to take a step back and be like, "Okay, can I be in 3 places at one time? If not, do I have a large enough team to spread everybody out?" There's a lot of thought that has to go. It was a hard decision, but I think ultimately it was the right decision.
Well, and listen, I'm going to coach you for a minute here if that's okay with you.
Coach me.
Well, listen, if you grow your online business to be even bigger, does that fund you training people, housing people, getting people ready for when that pop-up comes next summer? And maybe it's in the same location, maybe it's in a
Yeah,
better location, maybe it's in like I think that there's a lot to say about slow, intentional growth that
yeah,
you're really demonstrating so beautifully, honestly, because I just think as high achieving women, we're like, bring it on. Like you said, you're like, I'll open it myself. We'll figure it
yeah,
out. Like, that's what my husband would be like, yo, like,
yeah.
we can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, he's always like, and 99% of the time he's like, go for it.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right. But I think that especially as new entrepreneurs, like people that are 1, 2, 3 years in, they're just like, oh, why wouldn't you do that? Oh man, when you're 10, 12 years in, you're like, I'm tired. Like, I gotta manage this myself. There's only so much brain power. But I do think that, I mean, even just what I see through your social media, it does feel like you've cultivated a great team and sort of like it seems like you have a lead manager or maybe 2 kind of managers who do a lot of your social with you.
Yeah, yeah. So we have like a whole social team right now. That's also something I'm really passionate about is like our social media, making sure it's telling our story, it's on brand, it's compelling. Yeah, that's like a huge focus for us as well. Cuz it all talks to each other, right? Like everything has to be cohesive and people have to have the same experience like here as they do when they walk in your store. So,
Totally, totally. And you're just doing most of your social and most of your TikToks and all that stuff, like right from what the Saratoga store, or do you kind of switch back and forth?
back and forth between the 2 stores, but yeah, we do them right in the stores, yep.
That's great. You haven't done anything special. You're literally just setting up a camera and going live.
Exactly.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Well, we'll have to get you back on soon to talk about TikTok
Oh my
growth
god,
and maybe share some of that
yeah,
because I think that there's a lot of people that are scared of TikTok or I don't know. I will tell you, I signed up to be a seller just to sell my silly calendar, just as I'll do anything once.
yeah, yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
like my attitude about most things. Like, I'll try to set this thing up,
yeah,
and it is a little confusing. And I am a little like, oh, I could love a course on it, or you know what I mean? But I do think there is a lot of opportunity. Like, if I could sell
mhm.
10 calendars a day,
That's
yeah,
a
I'd
huge
do that. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm joking, but I think that what you're saying too is that not to think that to sell on TikTok, it has to be this cheap Zanana stuff.
yeah,
It can be high end, like you're saying, under $1,000. That's a beautiful price point. That's what I would say too. I have this theory, like when you see those people interviewing on like Rodeo Drive and they're walking out and they're like, oh,
yeah,
what do you have in your bag? Da, da.
yeah,
Almost everything in those bags is under $1,000. People are
yeah,
literally just going in to treat themselves on like their credit card, and
yeah,
they're like, I have $1,000. I'm gonna buy a wallet. I'm gonna buy
Yeah.
a whatever. I mean, I bought a wallet from you because I was like having
Yeah.
a bad day. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I think I was going through IVF and it was like the pandemic. It was weird. And I was like, I'm gonna go buy myself a wallet because like F that, and I came upon you that I love.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. But I think, yeah, I think it's nice to hear someone talk about TikTok in a way that's not selling graphic tees or selling kind of junky junk stuff.
Yeah.
You're selling like really beautiful stuff. And yeah, let's
And I
have you
think
back on for TikTok if you're open to it.
yeah, no, I am because I think the thing about TikTok is like you find your people.
Mm,
Like they're like, oh, that like there's certain people who are selling on there that I wouldn't buy stuff from, but there's others that I would. And we also like try to dress professionally when we are on TikTok. Like we're always wearing a blazer and like a neutral and like hair, makeup, nails done. We're selling a designer item. So it's like the same way you would dress in the store. I've seen people like look like they rolled out of bed in sweatpants selling things on you know what I mean? It's like people want the presentation.
well, listen, I'm laughing because I'm also thinking as I'm swiping through lives of the ones that are like in someone's condo where they're like dancing until I get 400 likes, and you're just like, what
Yeah,
is this?
yeah,
You're like, I'm
yeah.
so like that's the part of
I
TikTok
wish
that I think freaks me out where I'm like, are you really sure? Like, are you good?
yeah,
Like, there's that
yeah,
funny side, but I hear you. There is a lot to be said for, noticing when sellers are consistent
yeah.
and they show up on time and they're dressed
Mhm.
professionally. I mean, all of that stuff, I agree with you. I think people they are buying from online, but they are still skeptical. And the more you can ease that, then
Yeah,
you'll get a sale way faster.
yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah.
Okay, I think we touched on everything we were going to touch on. This has been
Yeah,
such a nice hour with you. Thank you
of course,
so much. If
yes,
people want to
thank you.
follow you to just be inspired, where is the best place? I mean, obviously TikTok.
Yep, and on Instagram, Lola Saratoga, that's the same handle for TikTok and on Instagram.
Well, thanks so much, Megan. I'm so happy that we finally got you on and like you're one of the old gals here in retail now. So we've got to
Yeah,
document our experience at
totally
some
fine.
point. So
Yeah.